was interesting how the podcasting stars and the podcasting gods got in line with us this year, because when you actually messaged me on Facebook about, hey, let's do something for Podcast Day, I was thinking about you, which is
funny.
Yeah, and I was like, I really need to reach out to Brian, because it's such a huge supporter, such a fan. I've always enjoyed ProfitCast and what you're doing with the Real Brian Show, and so I think the podcasting stars align. So I will let you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience that is out there, and then we'll just get going talking about your podcast journey. Then we can sort of go on some rambling here.
Yeah, I love. Well, that's fun. That's Tangent Cast, isn't that kind of the? That's what we've always nicknamed our shows. Yeah, I'm the Real Brian. I've been. It's great. I love that. I know everybody asks me about my name. It's a radio name. Have fun with it. My real name is Brian, by the way. So that's nothing fake about that at all. But anyway, I've been podcasting for, oh my gosh, how many years now? Well, I've been behind the mic for a long time, 20 something years. Did radio for a long time. Did private stuff here and there. And once radio started to take its decline, I was like, what's the next thing? And that's when I discovered podcasting and went into that journey. And I started with a hip hop interview show, actually, which I had a lot of fun with, coming from radio. Unfortunately, the industry is tough. I mean, it's not just that. There's a lot of industries, that you just deal with politics, and I'm like, I just need the content. So that's always fun. But did that. And then I launched a show called ProfitCast, which some of you know about. And I did that as a journey to basically figure out, how do you do the whole podcasting thing? How do you monetize? How do you profit? And at first it started off as this idea of, how do you make money? How do you grow your audience? And I think it was actually you at New Media Expo when we were just having a conversation at that poolside. And you said something about, I love it how, you talk about profiting beyond the money. And I thought, I do. I didn't even really think about it until you said something. Both you and Steve actually were just, you were mentioning that. And I thought, that
is what I do. Yeah.
That is what and it was kind of one of those accidental things, I didn't actually set out to do that. But then I did realize that, it is, what is the definition of profit, so it became more about the money, less about the money and more beyond the money. Had a lot of fun doing that. Just ended ProfitCast recently so that I could take on the Real Brian Show journey, which is honestly the thing that I've been wanting to do for about 8 years now. This idea of doing kind of a morning show style, having my own show, doing my own thing, and having guests on. And it's kind of funny. I have people ask me, what's your passion?
Everything.
And I always laugh because I'm like, I don't have one, or what can you niche about? And I'm like, I'm not a niche person. I never have been. I get tired of talking about one thing. And I know that's what sells. I know that's what people get into, but it's like music too. I don't listen to one genre. I listen to almost all of them except country. I'm sorry, but I just can't get into country.
That's right. I'm in the same boat with you. So
nice.
Yeah. And I live in a country and I live in a country town, Bakersfield, California. So,
oh yeah. Well, and in Colorado, you got a bunch of, country folk out here, and I don't mean country folk. I mean, people who love country, but oh my gosh, no. But anyway, that's me. So, I said, I need to do something a little bit broader, which I know goes, against a lot of advice, and that's all right. We're going to have fun. And, but yeah, I'm excited. It launches Tuesday. I tried to launch today. I tried, but it just, didn't work.
Yeah, I was following you. I'm like, all right, man, he's going September 30th. Let's see what happens. So yeah, I've enjoyed following your journey, through the development of the Real Brian Show. A couple of the things I really learned from listening to ProfitCast, and I was thinking about this before we got on, was, obviously profiting comes in various forms and fashions. But I really like your authenticity. What you're doing is what you want to do. You're not necessarily submitting to the masses and doing something, as you said, trying to niche yourself down. It's about doing what you believe is authentic and true. And you can build off that because you have the personality, you have the following to do something like that. And to follow up on the whole profiting beyond the money, I was thinking about it because just today, well, I would say the last, 22 hours since I've been on this stream helping out, I have engaged and learned so much from so many different podcasters on the entire international scale. I mean, I met people that are running the Nigerian podcast network. I met a podcaster from Zimbabwe last night. The guys that were on our stream from India. developing the network and the issues going on over there, United Arab Emirates. Now that is truly profiting beyond what we're doing with just with Podcast Day. Yeah, it's about there's an element of making sure this thing is financially stable. We can move forward and we can travel and promote it, but it goes beyond that. It's connecting with those individuals at the international level and really being that resource to connect a lot of listeners to the shows that they want and connecting podcasters to the resources. So, I think when it comes to profiting, I would be the first to say that I have experienced that exponentially, and I really learned that from listening to your Profit Cast.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's kind of funny when I did, doing not even starting it, but just doing Profit Cast. Half the time you kind of go, is this even helping anyone? I can't tell you how many times I question that. But because I'm not a teacher naturally at all, and it's funny because people that going to what you're talking about is, not conforming to the masses, is that a lot of the people that I interviewed and discovered and everything, they were primarily making their money from teaching, coaching, courses, that kind of thing. I mean, that was probably 80 to 90% of podcasters that I interacted with, and so I was like, well, I guess that's what I have to do, and I just don't like that. I don't enjoy it. I love helping people, but I don't like to sit down with, somebody and try to give them answers and try to figure things out. And, well, I guess that sounds pretty mean, doesn't it? I actually do enjoy that, but you know what I mean? Like it's just not natural, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. It's almost, it's not unnatural. It's not necessarily uncomfortable. It's just one of the things that, you just have a different preference of going about that.
Like it's stressful for me, which, is weird. Even, like getting behind the microphone and making somebody smile and laugh and encouraging them, that's like cloud nine. It's like Christmas morning. I love doing that, but trying to teach is very stressful. So it's, I think I kind of learned that, going on that journey actually was just, sure, people are going to learn things and I can encourage and I can throw things out there. And, kind of like you're talking about with people profiting, stuff you've learned and stuff you're seeing around and all. It's like, I think people can learn things just from experiences and stories. And I think that's what I had to learn was instead of sitting down and saying, here are the 5 tips or 5 steps, which is a very common teaching style. I really sucked at that. But then sharing stories and having other people share stories, it was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is kind of more like we can all learn from this. We can learn from movies and TV shows. Like it's not rotting our brain. So.
No, it's not. And that's the interesting part is, yeah, you can watch a lot of TV. You can play a lot of games. You can do all those things that society says, oh, it's rotting our brains. We're losing our social connection with a lot of people. But I got to tell you, man, I have developed and created some amazing relationships just online. And
seriously,
so when you meet in person at different meetups and conferences, or if you go to podcast listening parties or whatever it may be, it's as if you've known them for years. It's handshake, it's hugs, it's let's talk about what's going on in your life and my life, and it definitely changes you. Yeah. And I think the big thing is, as you mentioned, going through those experiences, it's all about taking what we've learned in those experiences, both negative and positive, the dark side, the bright side, and saying, where can I change and where can I develop individually to become a better person, a better podcaster, a better coach, a better teacher, whatever that is. And I think that's ultimately what we try to do because, yeah, if you listen to the masses, which I think you've talked about a lot about, sort of paving your own road and creating your own path. If you listen to a lot of the naysayers, they're going to hurt you. It's going to be one of those things where they're constantly going to be pushing down on you saying, you can't do this, you can't do this. And I appreciate and try to surround myself around people that say, you know what you're doing, it's validating, it's what we need to do.
It's interesting because one of the big reasons that the Real Brian show has been pushed off so far is because of the naysayers. And I listened to them. I had a lot. It's amazing. It's, people coming to me and saying, this show's not going to work. You're never going to make anything of this. You're not going to make any money. It's too broad. I mean, you name it. And it's not like people were doing it to hurt me. It's just they'd never done it themselves. So in their mind, it wasn't possible. And I got that from probably 80% of the people I talked to. And so I kept doubting myself, second guessing. I'd go back to the drawing board and I'd be like, forget it. I don't know. I can't do this. So that's actually one of the reasons it's taken so long for me to launch this show is because I didn't believe I could do it. And finally, one day I just like, I don't really care anymore. I'm just going to do it. And oh, well, But my wife and I actually hashed out a bunch of stuff, and we were like, oh, actually, it's been there the whole time. I've just not been trusting it or believing it or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I think that's important, especially in the podcasting space, and on a personal level, is believing in yourself, having that inherent belief within yourself. What you're doing is what you were meant to do, what you believe that you need to do, and listening, having those naysayers in your ear, they put all these little seeds in your head, seeds of doubt and everything, and it's tough. And I know personally, managing the social media for the podcast day thing is, we do get some negative feedback from people here and there. And it's difficult to set that aside, because for every 999 people that are happy, there's going to be one person out there that doesn't like what you're doing, that doesn't appreciate what's happening. And you can't let that 0.1% get under your skin,
That's true.
And
That's true.
It's about looking past that and realizing that, hey, there's another 1,000 people out there that's really appreciate what you do, that love connecting. And I think that's where we need to maintain our focus and our energy.
Yeah. Well, there's that inner circle of trust, a little, meet the parents reference there. And I feel like we do need to have only those people. And it's going to be maybe 5-ish, somewhere in there, people that you can really trust, and that, they have your back and they've got your best interests in mind. And they're actually there to cheer you on, not be stupid. You hear about the thing, don't tell your parents, your parents are always going to love what you do regardless. But I do feel like there are some people that you can have in that inner circle that are amazing about giving you encouragement, boost forward, but also some honest feedback too, and saying, yeah, well, good. See, there you go. You never know. You never know. If your parents can do that, that's awesome. That's not always the case, in many cases. So, but I do like that. And I think it's important to get that honest feedback, but then to say, these are the people that I trust. It's my advisory council, whatever you want to call it. And then if anybody else has anything to say, I'll listen to it, see if it's worth listening to and actually implementing or not. But I do agree with you. And I think naysaying actually is what I think gets most people down from ever doing anything. And that's one of the things that, kind of this idea in the Real Brian Show is something that goes back, like I said, about 8 years. And it's this idea that I view people in, I have a lot of conversations. I'm an extrovert, so I love just getting out and meeting people. But I see, 80%, I love throwing out percentages, even though it's probably not true. I'm going to exaggerate. 100% of the people I talk to, everybody, totally kidding. A lot of people I talk to have this, going back to a quick quote that I think Tim Ferriss said this, I think. What's the opposite of happiness or, joy or whatever, And everyone's like, oh, sadness or anger. And he's like, no, it's apathy. It's a lack of emotion. And I've had a lot of conversations recently with some actors and writers and authors and really, really cool stuff. And I've heard a common theme that, you try to evoke emotion one way or the other. So even if you got people walking out, on you, you've evoked an emotion. They're mad at you, it's a polarizing effect. When you have no emotion, when you have that apathy and people are just like, I could care less about whatever I'm watching or listening to or whatever, that's the problem. And I've started to see that there's a common thread in a lot of people nowadays that, they follow the American dream and they get their job and then they realize they hate their job, but then they feel stuck. And so then they just mentally check out and then they just become this apathetic person, not intentionally. It's their way of, numbing the pain. And so they figure, well, what am I going to do? And I'm not going to get a job, because I've listened to the naysayers, right? And I'm never going to amount to anything. I'm never going to be any better. And so they just exist and they take the easy path. And I find that that's becoming a common problem. And one of the things I've been wanting to address for 8 years is, what do we do to combat that? Mm-hmm. The problem is when people are in that, they don't want to hear that they're in that. They don't want to know that. They don't want somebody to come and tell them, hey, you're in that moment. Let me encourage you. They're like, I don't need encouragement. I'm good. And so, kind of part of this idea for launching the Real Brian Show is to help encourage people without them, like me actually going to somebody and saying, you need help. It's just more of I'm going to share stories. We're going to have interviews. We're going to have entertainment. It's going to be fun. But I hope through all of that, people are encouraged to, going back to what you said, be the best them, do what they're meant to do, be encouraged and have the courage to actually do it and launch and take it off.
Be the best them. I really like that. That's I've picked up a lot of little quotes from a lot of our participants with podcasting. And I do like that one. It's interesting. How do we get past the naysayers? How do we get past that pride wall that we've built up over time, saying, I'm good where I'm at? I mean, can you maybe share some of your own personal stories about with the naysayers, what has happened, how you've got past?
Yeah.
I know it's a big question to ask, but
it's a lot of years. So it's
okay.
I'm trying to think of some moment. No, it is a good question though. It's not something that happened quickly. I mean, I think when it came to going back to your pride question, dealing with pride was having to fall. Let's put it that way.
It's true.
I had to screw up big and I had to face the consequences because I thought I was invincible. I was young. I could do stupid things. I could do whatever I want. So I had to go through that, and it wasn't easy. And I learned a lot through that and realized that, world doesn't revolve around me.
It's always shocking when we find that out, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's like, it. You're like, oh, it doesn't revolve around me, but you act like it does, right? You know what I mean? So yeah, I had to learn. I'm from the school of hard knocks. I learn the hard way all the time. So people can tell me everything they want, but sometimes I'll understand it and hear it. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, cool, I got it. And then I have to experience it. But so that was never fun to go through. So I think it had to go through a pretty tough time, to build back from that. And of course, I think, you have two choices. You can either, what is it? Oh my gosh, Batman quote, right? Like, what happens when we fall? We got to pick ourselves back up. That's not it, but I'm quoting it wrong. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The idea that
he's the butler that knows all.
Totally.
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
the wise butler. Exactly.
He is.
So, if you do fall, how do you get back up though? I think is more the question. So do you get back up on the right foot and do you, learn from it and make the right decisions from there? Or do you not care and screw up and, do it again or do things worse, whatever, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's a lot of the thing that I like to encourage people to do is look at where you're at. I don't, honestly, like, I don't know how if you don't know you have pride, then I don't know what to tell you. It's kind of one of those things. But going back to the naysayers, I think it goes back to, you got to surround yourself with, the sum of 5 people around you. Let's just go with that. Sum of 5 people around you. Surround yourself with 5 really healthy people. And that may not include some of your family. I think everyone's like, oh, family's everything. And, I love family. Don't get me wrong, but some family is not healthy to be around on a regular basis. Granted, they're your family. You still got to be there. But I think surrounding yourself with 5 healthy people, regardless of what that is essential, because you're going to listen to them. You're going to, absorb who they are as well. And I think you just, you become a better person that way. So do they too, right? But I think there's a lot of that. And I think too, having something Jeremy and Jason from Internet Business Mastery, talked about is your single motivating purpose, which can also be translated as what's your mission and your purpose in life in general. And I think defining what that is, somehow, whatever that is, write it down, make it a statement, know this is why I'm, here on this earth or what I'm doing, or even if you're just trying to figure it out. And so that way, when other things come at you, when the naysayers come at you, you can say, no, but I believe that I'm doing the right thing here. And of course, getting advice is a good thing. Finding out, is this something that resonates? I think with the Real Brian Show, I went through, I don't know, probably, quite a few iterations of how to actually present what it is I'm trying to do. Because nothing's changed from the mission of the show for 8 years, but I wasn't able to launch until I was ready to do it. And then it took me about 6 months of presenting different things to people and finding, most of the time people would be like, that's cool. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? They're like, they have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm going, okay, that scratch, back to the drawing board. How do I present this? And the best thing I came up with finally, hopefully this works, is embrace your inner nerd and unleash your superhero, which is the idea that we all nerd out about something. We all do. It doesn't matter who we are. And the people that have taken that idea and taken it as something that they've been able to do something with to unleash their superhero idea, i.e. their mission, their purpose, and impact the world. And I know a lot of people that have done that. And those are the people that are going to be sharing stories on the show. And it's cool. So Jason Bryant, yes. He's got a story to share.
That's Mighty Mouse. Yeah. And I love it because as you're talking about with your mission, your passion, your goals, whatever it is, yesterday, Stephen A. Hart from Trailblazers podcast was on here and he goes, this is one of the simplest rules or things that I'm going to say, but it's so critical. It's such a simple task, but write down your goals. Write down what you're doing for the next day, what you're going to do in the 6 months, whatever it is, because then you have almost your own accountability written down on paper that said, okay, what I'm going to be doing the next month is this with your goals. And yeah, as you mentioned, you're going to have to pick yourself up that you may be knocked down for a couple days. It could be a couple weeks. It could be a couple months. As you said, it could be a couple years, whatever that time frame is. It's just about making sure you stay the course and you have some endurance in order to maintain those goals. And I think it's a very simple thing. I think a lot of us put it in the back of our mind, be like, okay, this is where I want to go. This is who I want to be. This is the person I want to be. This is the show I want to create. But it's just, it's all muddled. Nothing's concrete. Nothing's in writing. Nothing's being shared, as you said, with your core group of friends. That may be family. It could be a mentor. It could be a fellow colleague, whatever it is. But I think it's super critical in order to get any success, not only in podcasting, but just in our personal lives. Our relationship is just setting those goals and those boundaries and figuring out how to approach it that way. Yeah,
that's true. Well, and it's a hard process too. I mean, it's not something that comes easily. And, one of my new quotes is nothing good is easy, which I think is true most of the time anymore, but that's okay. Right? Like, who cares? Relationships are hard work, but they're worth it, So I think that a lot of good things are worth doing, and it takes a lot of work and everything, but it's going to be a journey, and enjoy the journey, have fun with it. I think something that I really do struggle with this is enjoying the journey. I'm like, I got to get there. And I hate the process, but then, so, one of the things I hate, and I'll tell you this, and it's kind of funny. I am not a logistics person. I'm the creative, right? I want to get behind the mic. I just want to do my thing. I want to create content, have fun. I hate the details. Absolutely hate them. And that's the thing that, dang near killed me trying to get this thing launched. But thankfully I've had some help from some awesome people who have helped me with some of that stuff too. Again, it goes back to being the best you, doing what you're naturally good at, strengths, all that good stuff. But, it's a process, right? But I think sometimes too, there's the other side where people are struggling to figure it out. I was just having a conversation with somebody recently who, got laid off, trying to figure out what to do, blah, 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 and I was asking him, like, what are your passions? Like, what do you enjoy doing? He's like, I don't know. And I thought, really? Like, you have no idea what you enjoy doing? He's like,
there's got to be something.
Yeah. But he was so far into the funk, the mental funk of, I just got laid off. I'm not worth anything. I have no idea. My brain's mush. He couldn't even figure out what he enjoyed doing. And I thought, man, that's more common than you think. So yeah, it's the encouragement and the inspiration to get people to figure that out and not to copy everyone else. I mean, how many times have we seen the copycat podcasts? There's another one.
How many?
The same thing, and they're acting like this same podcaster. I'm like, stop doing that. Be yourself. Never going to get anywhere if you copy someone. It's just that simple.
Yeah, that imitation factor only gets you so far, and usually that how far isn't very far. And it's be authentic, be yourself. It doesn't matter if you have 1,000 iTunes reviews or if you have one review and a 5-star rating on your show. If you're being yourself and you're connecting with your audience and you feel good about yourself, I think that's the best place for you to be. So let's dive into, obviously your show is launching October 4th. The Real Brian Show. You said it's going to be kind of morning variety thing. As you said, you want us to go tell family, coworkers, neighbors, hairstylists, the doctor, checkout girl at the grocery store, all those different things. You just want us to start spreading the word about the show.
Sure. I like it.
So your show has been, as you mentioned, developing for a number of years. So I kind of wanted to have you highlight sort of your podcasting career. Okay. I know you've done a few other shows with Addie Saucedo, for example. And
hi, Addie, by the way.
Yeah, she's in there in the chat room. Hello. And I just wanted to kind of, how has that journey really paved the way? I know you touched on it a little bit, but how have those previous podcasts and the relationships you've made really created this show? Because I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, that's sort of, the progression of where you've come. And I know you didn't want to give up Profit Cast, but you knew it was time. It's time to move on. You made some great relationships, but maybe talk about how maybe some of the lessons learned from your previous two shows, Podcaster's Paradise. I forgot that as well. Yeah. How this really, you were able to brand the Real Brian Show in sort of the evolution of that.
Yeah, well, an Aero Squad too. So there's been a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, and I had failed to mention this earlier, but I was mentioning Backstage Pass was the first real podcast that I did, but then TV Talk was kind of where things launched. So even though I'd been behind the mic, most of my life and had this this idea for this show 8 years ago, kind of thing, and I when I was a kid, I always wanted to be to grow up and be the morning show guy on a radio station, and never did. Not like an actual regular radio station and everything. I got to do it on online radio, but. So, I kind of wanted to recreate something like that, but TV Talk, I think, is actually what spurred this whole thing forward from, an idea and being in radio to actually having connections in podcasting. And so going back to what you were talking about, profiting with people, meeting people, having relationships. I mean, I'm still in touch with quite a few of the TV Talk people. Doug, right there, Doug, no? And it's cool because I heard about this and I'm thinking, okay, there's a network of podcasts that are talking about TV shows. Well, I love TV shows. And I had been watching Arrow since literally the day the pilot came out in 2012. Every single week, loyal fan. And I heard about this TV Talk thing. And I contacted this dude named Daryl Darnell, who everybody knows. I didn't know who he was at the time. This was in 2013. And I said, wait a minute, you're telling me you get paid to talk about TV? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I'm submitting my application. I want to be a part of this.
Yeah, where do I sign up?
Yeah, and he's like, well, do you know anything about production? I'm like, oh yeah, I've done production my whole life in radio and stuff. And yes, and I want to do Arrow. So excited. Anyway, so I got in and I got paired up with Kevin Batchelder, aka the Podcast Overlord. And I had no idea who this guy was either. And so we're talking about Arrow. I had a great time. Unfortunately, TV Talk lasted, a little over a season, I think, and then ended up having to close the doors on that. But Kevin and I were able to take TV Talk Arrow and basically keep our listeners and turn it into Arrow Squad, which is what we've affectionately named our listeners. But that started kind of this whole thing because, I started to have real interaction with listeners that, we never really had in radio because it was... you might have a couple of people call in once in a while on a radio station, but when it comes to podcasting, when you got people contacting you all over the place, social media, it's amazing. And we have some of the best, amazing community ever at that group. Still going. Arrow starts back up next week. I'm excited, 5th season already, if you can believe that. But that started it. All of these people we met at TV Talk, I was actually amazed that when TV Talk shut down, we all kept in touch. You don't see that very often, and I wasn't expecting that. But some of these people now are amazing friends, like people that I consider closer than a lot of people I have locally. So it's kind of funny. But that started the whole journey. And I thought, well, man, if you can get paid to talk about TV, and if you actually have people who love to hear you talk about TV, there's some potential up there for so much. And then starting ProfitCast, which I talked about already a little bit. And then it was Jason Bryan, actually, that I had on. He actually contacted me and said, you don't know me, but I'm actually getting paid to podcast a different way than you talk about. Had him on and he's like, I host podcasts for wrestling colleges and organizations. And I thought, wait a minute, you get paid to podcast for someone else. I'm like, this is awesome. So he was kind of the first person that introduced me to that. I mean, I know he's not the only one and other people have done this, but it was something that I'd first heard about. And then Addie and I talked, no, you know what? It was audiobooks that approached me, and Addie and I were in conversation at some point about doing something like that together. We were just having a fun time. And Audiobooks contacts me and says, do you know anybody that would host a podcast for us? Yes, yeah. We'll do it.
Sign me up.
And they said, we'd like a co-host. I have a co-host for you. So Addie and I did that. We had a blast doing it. We learned a lot during that, though. I will tell you that. We learned a lot about boundaries and having confidence and presenting yourself as the expert. Just to put it nicely. That's
a good lesson right there, right?
Yeah. Wonderful people, don't get me wrong, but you know what I mean. If you don't come across as the expert, confident, and you don't set boundaries, you're going to get walked over. It's just the way it works in business. It shouldn't, but it does, unless you get lucky. And then and that's when I approached John Lee Dumas and said, man, can I host this for you? Podcasters Paradise idea. And he said, sure, let's do this. And I actually didn't expect him to say yes. I mean,
I'll give this a shot.
Yeah, we had a past, relationship as far as, we'd known each other for a while, and we weren't, like good friends or anything, but we knew each other well enough. But it was one of those things where I'm like, I'm just going to pitch him. What the heck, He said yes. I couldn't believe it. So that was a really, really cool journey. We went a year on that one. We did just shut that down as well. Not I mean, we left on awesome terms, and honestly, that was an incredible experience, and we're still friends. And hopefully, in the near future, Sarah and I are going to go visit Kate and John in Puerto Rico.
Ooh, that'll be nice. Good weather. Yeah, and you've also you've moderated some TV talk sessions at conferences. Is that correct?
Not TV talk, but yeah. So Jason Kabassi, who's Walking Dead cast, but he was on TV talk as well, and he is part of the Walker Stalker fan fests. They started a new Heroes and Villains fan fest, and he emails me out of the blue and says, "You have any interest in coming and hosting, panels, moderating panels at a convention?" And I said, "Well, sure." And I'm thinking fan panels. And he said, "Okay, cool. You cool with interviewing like Stephen Amell and the cast of Arrow and Flash?" And I went, "Wait, what? Are you serious?" Like,
catch your breath for a second right there.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of busy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could fit in, flying to San Jose. So I did it, of course.
Yeah, obviously.
It was amazing. Done that 4 times now. And that's been a neat experience just to be able to, it's funny though. Cause Emily O'Leary, also used to be a co-host and writes all of the blog posts for ProfitCast and now the Real Brian Show, by the way. She's awesome. She's like, I would never get on stage and do that. She's like, I was terrified watching you up there. Just, like all the classic signs of a panic attack, basically. And I'm like, it was like Christmas morning. I couldn't wait to get up on stage. And I'm like, woo, this is great. And everyone's like, you're insane. I don't know. I love that kind of stuff. I'm weird. But
it's perfect. It's a perfect medium. Like you said, there's some people that it's made for, and there's some people that there's not. I could see Emily nervously pacing and shaking, be like, "Oh, come on, Brian, don't mess up. Do this." I mean, because I'm the same way. I don't mind getting behind a mic. I don't mind standing up in front of colleagues at work and providing training and a lot of different things. It's just it's in people's blood, and some people it's not. And Steve and I are actually going to be heading out to PodFest in February. And nice. we're going to be on a panel about how to create conferences, which is basically what podcasting is an online digital conference. So we're going to be out there, and I'm looking forward to sharing all the lessons learned from Podcast Day and what we've learned in our podcasting journey, because I've been podcasting since 2008. And so there's a lot of things we've learned. There's a lot of lessons learned over the last 3 years just with the Podcast Day, connecting and connecting with other resources and, creating a lot of efficiencies that I think a lot of people can learn from, that we continue to build off of. And so I kind of feel like you're in the same boat. Once you're, it's almost like home for you. It's a comfort to be on stage talking with some of the producers, the actors, a lot of those things. It's something that we just thrive on, and it's not for everybody. And I think that's a good point to bring across is, going back to our original thought of being authentic behind the mic and on your podcast. Don't create something you're not, because it's awfully difficult to live up to an image that isn't you. And so just, don't create any sort of lie about who you are. Just be authentic, find your comfort zone, find where you like to be home. And that's where you're going to thrive.
It's funny because you hear the whole fear stuff, everybody's talking about fear and you got to overcome your fear and everything. And, there's an element of truth to that, obviously. But I think that there's also a caution in that. I don't think a lot of people really go into the depth of what fear looks like, because, if I say that overcoming my fear is to go up and slap an elk on the butt during mating season, and then try to ride him, probably, great. I overcame my fear and I'm dead. So that's awesome. But I would have to say that, there's some things. So like if somebody is absolutely terrified about getting up on stage, is that a good fear to overcome? Now, only that person can answer that. I got to say that I love getting on stage. It's so much fun for me, but I can't lie. Like I still had nervousness, behind stage, getting ready to go up. Yeah. There is that moment of, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Wouldn't I just be more comfortable sitting out in the audience, just listening? Well, yeah, I would be more comfortable doing that, but I'm good on stage. I like being on stage. It's a passion. Who cares about, that's the kind of nervousness or fear that I do believe that we should overcome. But like you said, Dave, if it's not like you, if it's not the best you, then, maybe that's not something you should overcome. So I like to caution people on the whole overcoming your fear, because it's thrown around a lot. And I don't think a lot of people really understand what they're saying when they say it. And a lot of people go out and try to conquer fears that are bad idea, if you know what I mean, to conquer. So, yeah. And going back to what you were saying too, I think, how did this, truthfully, and I said this on ProfitCast, one of the things that I was so thankful for is that, yes, I made money doing stuff. Like I made money hosting podcasts for others. But I think the most important thing that came from ProfitCast and podcasting in general was the relationships. I mean, that was the thing I think that was really a profiting thing. And, yeah, it's amazing to get up and interview the actors, but, I'm not calling them, I'm going to text them on my cell phone, like, hey, what's up, Stephen and Mel? Woo! I'm not doing that kind of stuff. Like it, and that's okay with me. It was really cool. It was fun to meet them. They're neat people. But it went beyond that. It was more about the relationships that I built at the show. In fact, in August in San Jose, had a great time. I got to see some of the actresses that I knew and giving me a big hug, having a great time. But my best moments were, seeing and meeting some of the listeners from Aero Squad and hanging out with them and building relationships with that. And actually some of the artists that are there. And then of course, just some of the friends on staff. So it's like, to me, that was better than hanging out with the actors, for example, just because they're friends, these are friends and the actors aren't, you know what I mean? So I think looking at it from the relationships is what has allowed me to be where I'm at now. Honestly, starting the Real Brian Show, I don't have, the massive audience that a lot of these people, Tim Ferriss starts 7 million downloads. I'm not going to get that. Yeah, but he already had this huge tribe. I mean, I don't have that. So I don't know. I might get 7 listeners. I have no idea. We'll see, but
yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
I wanted to answer Jason's question.
Oh yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Hey, Jason.
Yep.
The first thought that came to mind was Knight Rider, but I'm going to have to go with Star Trek because I grew up with Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I have a huge passion. I'm a total nerd on that. And yeah, that's what I would have to do. There's a lot to talk about.
Star Trek, that goes way back.
It's the 90s. Well, 80s, dude. It started in 87 to 94.
87 to 94. Dang.
But they're TNG, Troy. But I will say this much. It's one of those shows nowadays. I was just talking to Garrett Wong, actually, who is actually episode 2 of The Real Brian Show, Ensign Harry Kim of Star Trek Voyager. That's who that is. I was just talking to him and, we were joking about Star Trek a little bit and, podcasts on Star Trek. And he's just like, there's so many of them. So it's got to be a lot better than everything else, or else I'm not sure if I'd want to start one right now.
Yeah, you continue to talk about, I think this is just a theme that continues to run through Podcast Day is those relationships, man. I mean, I know it's maybe we belabor the point a little bit, but I got to say, like, the success we've experienced with International Podcast Day is because of the relationships we've built. It's because we've been able to reach out and connect in a real personal, emotional level with a lot of people that have a real passion for podcasting, because the way this thing started was, Steve came up with the concept. I helped build the social platform and people flocked to it. We just provided the concept and everybody flocked to it, built around it, created it their own. They're created Podcast Day to be their own. And that's what we've always wanted to be. Use the hashtag, create the day, experience the day, do what you want. Keep in contact with us. Let us know what's happening. As you said, when you met the actors and some of the fans, it was some of the listeners. That's what I felt when I went to Podcast Movement. When I'm wearing the International Podcast Day shirt, and people come up and be like, "I'm so excited for this year. Thanks for everything that you guys did last year." Just a lot of compliments. And my first thing is thank you for your support. Because without them, it goes nowhere. I mean, the first year we did it, 2014, we only did 6 hours of broadcasting. It was very small. It was very it wasn't very well known, and we just built it on. And to take that big leap from 6 hours to 33 the next year has nothing to do with me or Steve. It's that community and this relationship we built over the short 12-month period to create that. And our events even gotten bigger this year. I mean, 16 countries represented. I mean, that's truly the international level at which podcasting is right now. And we had a good, diverse group of podcasters on our stream, and we'll continue to have. So, I know, relationships, we always talk about relationships, but it's something I think we continue to need to talk about, because we can't forget sort of where our origins came from and why we are in the places we are.
Yeah, I would agree. And it was neat to kind of, I'm getting over a cold, by the way, so I apologize for the nasal junk. Anyway, I think that was one of the biggest things I've always loved about podcast movement too, is that, it's for me, it's less about the sessions. I mean, yeah, they're great. You learn a lot. But it was just, it's about the whole time, meeting people, reconnecting, building relationships, that kind of thing too. And, I think, I was listening to some people recently about marketing and the importance of marketing. And, the reality is that if people don't know about your podcast, then you're not going to have listeners. It's that simple. I am not a marketing genius at all. In fact, I struggle with marketing when it comes to that, because I just like it to be real. I want somebody to listen to my show and say, I like this, Brian, well enough to share it with somebody else and be a supporter. That's what I want. And if they can't do that, I don't want to force somebody to go market it or force it in front of somebody that they're just like, whatever, I don't know. So I maybe I struggle with the idea of marketing, that you're trying to push something down someone's throat that they may or may care about. But then again, it's important to let people know. I don't know. Again, I'm not a marketing person, so don't ask me.
It's one of those things I've always, it's one interesting thing when I talk to some people at work about podcasting. They're like, it sounds fun to get behind a mic, but I don't want to promote myself. And that's one of the things I've heard a lot of people being like, I'm not good at it. And it's like, you don't have to be good at promoting yourself. That's not what it's about. I understand that you have to try and share your message, and you have something valuable to say that you want to reach a new audience. Yeah. But I think a lot of people think, the space or, writing a book or anything like that is just like a bunch of self-promotion. No, it's not. You have a great message. You have a great skill. You have something else. And when it comes to, creating something like that, you have to market yourself. It's difficult. And yeah, I think we all, as you said, you struggle with it. You don't necessarily want to go down that route. It would work if you did it. But as you said, we're more about throwing it out there. And if people grasp it and they hold on to it and they share it, awesome. That's what it's about.
I love what Glenn the Geek said, and it's funny because I'm sure it's been said before, but when he was on my show, and I know he's been on other shows, but he said something I'd never heard before. Because you always say, oh, it's who you know. That's where I'm going to get my job, right? That's where I'm going to get going somewhere. And if I know the right person, they're going to boost my podcast, or they're going to help me to reach. I mean, you watch Shark Tank and you're just like, oh, if only, that kind of thing. But Glenn said, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And I thought, yep, that is I'd never thought of it like that. But then I thought, I know a lot of actors, right? We talked about this, but are they chasing after me? No, I'm chasing after them. And what good does that do me or anyone else around me? Nothing, whoop-de-doo. But if they knew me, if they were, quote, chasing after me or you or whoever, right? That's the good thing. That's where it goes. But why are they doing that? Because you bring value. Like they value you for some reason or another. So it goes back to, what you were saying about promoting yourself, that if you deliver great value, if you're doing something that for somebody that people love, I mean, that's not necessary. I mean, you're promoting yourself, you're telling people about it, but you're telling people about it because it's going to be of value to them. It's going to help them. It's going to encourage them, whatever.
Yeah. It's not necessarily unsolicited, where it's like somebody doesn't want the information or something like that. You're just trying to pass along, hey, I got this good resource. You may encourage, do this. And we had a couple sessions where, you kind of approach it a different way, find what their interest is, find what their issue is, and provide something from another resource, whether it's a book, an author, another podcaster. And then once you have that relationship, you kind of build off that and say, oh, well, this is what I'm doing too. You may find of interest. If not, no harm, no foul, basically. So, I know a lot of people that struggle with I like to record. I don't want to promote myself. It feels awkward. It feels a little bit dirty inside, and it's like, we all have to do it, and I guess we all have our own limits. But that's a tough thing within the podcasting space. And as podcasters, we have to balance.
I think it's, to answer some questions that I've seen so far, on the chat. One thing that this is my little rule of thumb now, is that how would I like to be marketed to? That's kind of how I'm doing it. So it's like, I do want to know about things, I've subscribed to Tim Ferriss's 5 Bullet Fridays because I do want to know some of the things he uses or reads or whatever and recommends. And, most of it I don't care about. And so I delete the email, but there are those things once in a while where it's like, I got to try this. I'm going to try it out and see what happens. So, I like to know about stuff. And so I do want to be marketed to in a way that I like. So if I can take the way that I like to be marketed to and then just recreate that, then 1, I'm being myself, and 2, I'm, I may not represent everybody, of course, but at least that's something that I'm going to put out there. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. They can tell me, but that's my theory. Because then I don't feel bad about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. You never quite know where you're going to pick up, as you mentioned with Tim Ferriss's 5 little tips. Or you never know what you're going to pick up. I mean, you could get 7 newsletters from somebody that you subscribe to and nothing's applicable. And then all of a sudden you get that one, you're like, man, this is a game changer. This makes a lot of sense, or I'm going to use that. You just never know where that inspiration, where that little nugget's going to come from. That could be a conversation, like you said, in the hallways at Podcast Movement. It could be someone listening here on Fire Talk for the Podcast Day stream. You just never know where it's going to come from. And it could be just one of those things that absolutely changes your mindset, changes the way you think, or just simply improves something about yourself or your process. It's pretty incredible where we can pick things up at. Yeah.
Well, we're always trying to better ourselves. So, we're looking for things that we can do for that. And also just entertainment. And I think somebody told me once many years ago that, the 2 primary things that we pay money for, a lot of money for, is entertainment and education. Beyond our basic needs, of course. So, we've got our basic needs. But beyond that, stuff that we pay money for that is elective, I guess is the best way to put it, is entertainment and education. And if you think about it, almost every single podcast that I even know of falls into those 2 categories.
True.
Encouragement and all that's part of it, because that's just my thing. But, I would rather encourage through entertainment than education, for example. But so, it's funny, you think about the movies and people, TV shows and movies we all talk about, but it's amazing the conversations that come from that. It's not just about, well, this happened and that was cool. It's like we start applying it to our own life and, oh my gosh, well, it's funny. I think
it is. Yeah. I mean, I think back to when my wife and I are sitting on the couch watching some TV shows, and, the one that comes to mind is American Crime. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that drama. I think it was on ABC, a very pointed show with a lot of cultural issues that are very relevant, and it makes you think. And there's a new show called This Is Us, and I don't know if you guys saw the pilot. I cried my eyes out. It's just a very emotional story that they're sharing, but as you said, we connect with that entertainment, and there's an emotional response to it. And we value it a lot. And like you said, it raises those tough questions, makes us think about ourselves. And I think that's ultimately what it's about.
Yeah. And, there was a comment, about think of promoting the content, not yourself. And I think that's a really good point too. But, I've heard this said too, that, content's awesome, but people can get content. Sure, you're going to bring your own content that nobody else can bring, right? Because we all have our own experiences and personal stories and that kind of thing. So but that's still us bringing it. So I feel that, there's a ton of self-help books out there, for example, but, we're not going to read them all, and we're not going to relate to them all. And they probably, a lot of them say the same thing, but we're going to connect with one of the authors because, I don't know, there's something about that person we connect with. So in some ways that, you want to promote the content, but at the same time, people are still coming for you, which I know is hard. You got to promote yourself, but they are coming for you. They like you.
Yeah, it kind of goes full circle. You start over here, you're promoting the content, but then they're listening to you because they value your opinion, because you're providing good content. It's just this like vicious circle of promotion and content. So fantastic, Brian. It's such a great session. Anything else you want to add before we end the stream? Anything you want to talk about with your show? I know we covered a lot. As you mentioned, we started at the top saying it's more of a tangent cast where we talked about sort of your journey, my journey. Kind of got a little personal and emotional there with some of the content, but we just sort of went all over the place.
Well, I thought for a minute you said before we end this dream, and I thought, this has been a dream, man. I don't know what's going on, but then I was like, oh yeah, stream. Sorry,
stream, yeah, so we'll dream.
Yeah. You know what? All I'm going to say is please check out the Real Brian Show. And the reason is because one, I really do want honest feedback. I want people to check it out. I hope you're encouraged. I hope it's something you like. It's just to give a little bit of an example, because there is the morning show aspect. On Tuesdays, I'm going to be doing interviews with people that, like I said, have embraced their inner nerd and unleashed their superhero. It's going to be fun. I'm starting off with 2 actors and having a lot of fun with that. But it's not going to be just celebrities. It's going to be all kinds of people all over the place. Stuff they've done is going to be really cool stories. I won't air them if they're not good stories. And then My goal is actually to do a 5-day a week thing, but I'm going to start off with the 2 and 3 day a week and see how I can handle that first, just to be, to be safe. So I'm going to be doing a thing called Superhero Fridays, which eventually I want to co-host. I want it to be like a morning show. We're talking about stuff, unleash the superhero moments, stuff like that. I'll explain that all in the show. And then I have a little special thing that I'm working on for a Thursday, and that is going to happen. It's just a matter when I pull it all together. Should I tell you? I mean, I don't know. I want to tease it, but I don't want to you know what I mean? It's going to be really cool. Maybe you just have to wait.
Yeah, we can wait. I like that idea.
All right.
I think you've teased it enough. I think we're already on edge. So
okay,
hey,
good.
Brian,
I just want to make sure because some people are like, "What's it about?" But there you go. So realbrianshow.com Tuesday it launches.
Cool. Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining in. I'm glad we were able to meet up.
Yeah, thank you for doing this.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm glad that you're able to come on board and share sort of your podcasting journey and kind of go, like you said, a few tangents in and around the space and who we are and all those things. So appreciate you joining the 2016 International Podcast Day stream. We're going to end the broadcast, but we will be right back in about 3 minutes with the next guest. So thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.